What's up everyone, it's Kadi with MoneyVest. So in this video, we are going to be talking about one stock that has the potential to get up to the next $1 trillion mark. And yes, it is actually quite a bold statement. I understand that. There has been a few reports that have been covered on this company, on this stock, that again, suggesting what it's going to take for this stock, for this company to get up to that $1 trillion mark. And the reason I say this is because the market for where they operate is really large. It is really big, and it is of course not Tesla. Nvidia is already over $1 trillion. Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, Meta, a lot of these companies are already trading at well over $1 trillion. And this right here is a company that could be very much under the radar. You know, people don't really think of this company as something that it has the potential to grow, has been significantly undervalued for the majority of time. I actually did a video on this company last year, 10 months ago. I talked about this in 2023 and how it is a buyable opportunity in the low 100s, right? So at low $100, it's actually a buying opportunity for the stock. And since then, it is up over 70%. So it has actually done really well, gone up fantastically over the last few months here. And I'm going to discuss what it's going to take for this company to keep doing well. I'm not going to be going over the $1 trillion mark, but yes, there is potential for this business. So hope you all enjoy it, find it helpful. Make sure that you drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're just joining us for the first time. And again, links to our Discord and Patreon is going to be down below. There are a few more spots left for with that 16% annual discount that's available until the end of this month. So just a few more days left with a few more spots if you want to take advantage of that. So again, links going to be down below, and we'd love to have you on board. So the company we're talking about today is going to be none other than Qualcomm, ticker symbol QCOM. And yes, this may come as a bit of a surprise to a lot of people and why we're talking about Qualcomm and $1 trillion stock. But people who are aware, people who are actually working in the semiconductor industry and understand the smartphone, IoT, and 5G market and how technology and devices are only going to grow, I do believe that the next $1 trillion business is also going to be a semiconductor stock. It's also going to be a chip stock. Could be ASML, could be TSMC, could be AMD, could be Qualcomm, could be Intel for that matter. We never know, right? We don't know. But it's going to be, in my opinion, in the chip sector, in the semiconductor space, because of how large the functionality and the use cases are with the semiconductors and chips, and how much potential, all these companies and everything that we're doing with technology, these are the brains behind everything. These are quite literally the brains. Without chips, without semiconductors, we have nothing smart, right? We have just simple, plain technology, but it's really the chips and these semiconductors that really make it more and more sort of smart and something that actually is of functioning and of use case. So will Qualcomm be a $1 trillion stock by 2030? So Qualcomm's stock price surged by 10%. And this again was back in 2022. And the reason why there is question about this company potentially achieving a $1 trillion market cap by 2030 is because of the market addressable market that this company basically demands, right? So we're looking at an addressable market of close to $2.5 trillion. So this right here is a very large addressable market for the 5G chipset market. Qualcomm will likely claim a large portion of that business. Moreover, its considerable earnings increases and the low PE ratio should push the stock higher regardless of whether the S&P 500 follows suit or not. So the addressable market is a pretty big deal when it comes to kind of forecasting whether a company increases or not in terms of value. If you're looking at a company that has a very small addressable market, then the potential for growth is really low. Right now, we're looking at a company like Qualcomm, which is growing or which has revenues in the tune of about $37 billion. So this right here, $37 billion on a scale with a forecasted 5G chipset market of $2.5 trillion by 2030. So this right here are videos that I did on Qualcomm at about $115, buying Qualcomm at $115 10 months ago. And 10 months ago, again, back in, I believe, March or April, or actually May of 2023, at the time, it was trading at roughly around $116, $115, back about 10 months ago. I did a fair value assessment of $98 per share. That was my intrinsic value back then. We needed a 15% drop in the stock price in order for it to be trading at its intrinsic value. And look what happened. This right here is basically when the video came out. So May of 2023. So right over here. So May 23, we're talking right over here this time. This is where we were talking about it in that video. So May, June of 2023 at around $114, $115 where it's trading at, and my fair value was at $98. I even said in the video that low 100s would make for a very good deal. Guess what happened? It got rejected here, sold off very, very nicely, and pretty much traded down to as low as $103, $104 a share. And since then, of course, as you'll notice, it's just been on this absolutely amazing rally. There's been a lot of institutional involvement with some big whales and some bankers stepping in for Qualcomm, and of course rallying well over 65, close to 70%. We're going to come back to the technicals later in the video because they are, of course, a bit more overbought at the moment. So technically speaking, yes, there is a little bit of that overextension on the price, but the bottom line is the long-term trajectory continues to be super strong for the company. And this right here, again, was the video that came out back in May of 2023. So this right here is Snapdragon. So, there's, like I said, in terms of total addressable market and everything that they are doing, it also plans to launch a PC chip over the next year, adding communication capabilities to the market. Additionally, its Snapdragon chip goes into the Meta platform's Oculus virtual reality headsets, placing the company directly into the metaverse, and $100 million in research and funds in this market could lead to further applications in this segment as well. So not only do we have the smartphone 5G chip market, we've also got the autonomous driving, we've also got the virtual reality and the metaverse aspect of it, we've got the Internet of Things. So, this right here, again, is a business that is, I feel like, flying under the radar right now. And the company's business could certainly help. DataBridge, again, DataBridge is another company that's planning on doing an IPO very soon. Market research believes that the market size for 5G chipsets will grow to over 2.5 trillion, amounting to a compounded annual growth rate of 49%. So 49%, $2.5 trillion. Those are some big numbers, and that's exactly why I'm a little bit more confident than other companies with respect to how big Qualcomm can really get in its business. Because right now, the market cap is still $188 billion, right? On a comparable basis, if you look at AMD, it's crossed over to $300 billion, right? So AMD could also be a very good potential candidate for getting up to that $1 trillion mark. Nvidia is already at over $2 trillion. And then, of course, some of the other chip stocks. So if you take a look at, we talked about Semiconductor last year, which has been one of the best picks on the channel here. We talked about it when nobody was talking about it, in the 30s and $40, and of course now it's trading well over $900, actually over $1,000, and the market cap is now reached over $59 billion. ASML is also a potential candidate. We talked about it. ASML has been one of my top picks, top stocks, made good money on this company, trading at almost $380 billion. Applied Materials, we've talked about it on the channel, $171 billion. But Qualcomm, I feel like, is the one to also be looking at more closely, more aggressively from a long-term basis. And this right here, again, are going to be some of the other partnerships. So they did extend the partnership with Samsung, a multi-year partnership for Snapdragon. This right here is the first quarter fiscal year 2024 results. So revenues coming in at just shy of $10 billion with an EPS of about $2.46 and a non-GAAP EPS of $2.75. So Qualcomm CMDA Technologies, $8.4 billion of revenue above the guidance range. Licensing Technologies, $1.5 billion, which was, again, a little bit higher on the higher end of their guidance range. Margins, we're sitting at EBT margins of about 74% for the company as well. And this right here are for the entire fiscal year 2024. Actually, the second quarter fiscal year 24 guidance is what they previously had versus what their new guidance is. So earlier it was at 8.9 to 9.7 billion dollars in the, actually this is the guidance for second quarter. This right here is the actual results versus the previous guidance that they had. So $2.75 billion in non-GAAP EPS, higher than what the guidance was. $9.9 billion in revenue, with, again, the revenues, again, $8.4 billion coming from QCT, $1.5 billion coming from QTL for the business, and they are guiding for $8.9 to $9.7 billion in the second quarter fiscal year 24 revenues, with $2.20 and $2.40 in earnings per share for the business. Now, balance sheet is perhaps one of the things that is a little bit of a, I would say, a concern, just from a cash to debt standpoint, because cash is sitting at $8.1 billion with a marketable securities of about 3.9. So if you do the math, that's sitting roughly almost at $12 billion in cash and marketable securities for the business. And then we have long-term debt, which is sitting all the way down here. at around $14.5 billion for the company. So I would say cash and debt is quite similar to each other, which is a good thing, which ideally we want cash to be higher than long-term debt. But right now we're kind of comparable with each other. They're somewhat similar at the moment. And then of course we have the goodwill, which is over $10.7 billion. So that's about 20% of the overall balance sheet. So that is something to keep in mind because, intangible assets, goodwill is an intangible asset, and if it's over 20% of the overall total assets here, that's a little bit slight concern there from a balance sheet perspective. But current ratio is good. Cash to debt ratio is close to 1. And then we've got goodwill, which is, again, like I said, a little bit of a concern to look into because of how high it is in terms of its total assets breakdown. So 5G capabilities and cloud-connected devices, including the automotive's integration of Arriver into Qualcomm's existing capabilities. And again, autonomous driving is another really, really big piece of the overall pie for Qualcomm's total addressable market. And this was just on October 24th, 2023, that Qualcomm announced 2 new chips, one for PCs and laptops called the X Elite, and the new chip for the high-end Android phones called the Snapdragon Series 8 Gen 3, and the enhanced AI feature on the new Qualcomm phone chip is a sign that AI is becoming a new battleground for smartphones, futures, and sales. Now, going over to some of the earnings expectations for this business, and the reason why this has been always so interesting stock is because the valuation's always been low. I mean, take a look. Okay, we're looking at a price earnings multiple of 17 to 19, right? We're going to do some calculations here in just a minute, but we're looking at price to earnings at around 17 to 19 with a price to sales starting at under 5 to 5.2 and price to cash flow at 13.5 to almost 17. So we are looking at a low valuation stock with also a decent dividend yield of just under 2%, with earnings expectations also expected to grow here by over 15, 10%, 5%, 6%, and 12.5% to almost over $14 per share. With the revenue, just again, we're looking at mid to low single digits in terms of growth. But these expectations, I do feel, are a little bit more on the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to the potential for Qualcomm in the market that it operates in. So, if you do the math here, if you come over to the 5-year DEM, or let's just go with 7-year discounted earnings multiple model, because again, 2030 is going to be 7 years out. Qualcomm over here, and we apply the net income from last year. So if you come back here, net income for 2023 was just over 7.2 billion, so 7232, and let's just say that we're applying a growth rate of so for in terms of earnings right now we're looking at a growth rate for the next 4 years at roughly over 10%, 5, 6, and then 12.5. So if you average those out, I think it's going to be closer to 10%. But I also do believe that these are a little bit of an underestimate of what Qualcomm can grow at over the long term, given such a large addressable market and the strong market positioning that this company has. So if I go with, let's say, 16% growth rate for years 1 through 7 for Qualcomm, and we apply slight multiple expansion, if you apply slight multiple expansion for the business at 25, so it's going to go from like 17 to 20 up to 25 in terms of that multiple expansion. 12% discount rate can be lowered because the company does pay out a dividend. So we do have a dividend yield of about 1.89%. So we can actually even go as high as 10.5 in terms of that discount rate, and then 10% margin of safety, and also share buybacks, because the company does do share buybacks here. So if you come over to financials, we're looking at share buybacks because the company has been consistently buying a lot of shares of its own stock. It's gone from 1.7 billion down to 1.1 billion. So let's just do minus 2% for share dilution, in other words, buybacks. And we're looking at a fair value of closer to $235, meaning that, Qualcomm could be undervalued by 39%. Now, if I go with a lower growth rate of 10%, then at those levels, we're looking at almost about fair value. So basically what this means is that if Qualcomm is able to simply grow profits, bottom line profits, net income by 10% only, and demand a 25 times PE multiple, and of course continue with the share buybacks, we're looking at a stock that is trading almost exactly at its intrinsic value. At 169, fair value comes at 162. This right here is going to be the sensitivity grid, and again, you can kind of take a look on where Qualcomm would be based on different growth rates and different P multiples. Ideally, I would like to be a little bit more conservative. So if I'm going with, let's say, 10% growth rate and a 21, 23 times earnings multiple, which is going to be somewhat in line with where it's trading at the moment, I'll be looking at 130s and 140s for Qualcomm, with, again, a potential for it to grow to as much as $364, right? So from 160, so if it doubles in value from here, we're looking at a market cap that is going to be sitting at close to almost $400 billion, almost $400 billion. And then of course, long term, we're talking, let's say even 10 years out, there's possibilities for it to get up to those $600-700 billion mark, even possibilities for us to get up to that $1 trillion mark, depending on how much market share Qualcomm captures in the 5G space, and at the same time, what multiples and what growth rates come in. But this is a very, very conservative estimate. So on a conservative basis, the potential target is going to be closer to 364. That's almost a $400 billion market cap in 2030, right? And that's based on conservative estimates here. 10% growth rate with a slight multiple expansion for the business. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. And again, this is going to be the entire sensitivity grid. You can kind of go a little bit more aggressive or conservative based on your expectations for the business. But in terms of the technicals now, I do believe that all-time highs are incoming for Qualcomm. So that's going to be the target, 181. That's the all-time high. Support level is going to staple right over here. I can feel on 159, 160 down to as low as 137. And of course, very, very important level of support sitting right over here for Qualcomm, aligned with those moving averages, along with that 200 SMA and the 100 SMA for Qualcomm as well. So that is going to be that support level at close to 120s for Qualcomm. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Hope you all enjoyed this video. And again, make sure that you drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Links to our Discord and Patreon is going to be down below. And again, let me know what you know about Qualcomm. I would love to know from you guys as well. Happy investing. I'll see you all in the next video.